Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about the first year of Red Dead Online and how I personally experienced it from both a content perspective and also just a player in general. Because when it first was announced, and obviously we knew it was coming because with after GTA Online, there was no way Rockstar wasn't going to do Red Dead Online as well. And well, they started off with a beta and all the good stuff, but before we even started playing it, it sounded very exciting because after having played RDR1 in its multiplayer, we were like, wow, this is more than likely going to be an expansion upon that. And especially when it started making claims like, hey, we took the best from heist and gun running and all those much beloved updates from GTA Online, and thinking, hey, we got a narrative and we got this and we got that, and it all sounded very promising. And then on November 28th, 2018, our Red Dead Online actually came out, and we started to see what actually happened. Now, personally, at first, I was really loving the game. The PvP was basically the main aspect of it when it first came out, and I was really enjoying it. But as more and more time went on, it started to see more and more flaws because the amount of maps that were released and the amount of modes that you could play and the spawns inside of the Showdown Large series and the terribleness that is Hostile Territory Large with 32 players, and it started to kind of pile on, and everyone started to think there isn't really an awful lot in Red Dead Online. And I know, for the longest time it was a beta, which was fine, and I understand, that way they can kind of get away with the lesser functioning features, to put it that way. But unfortunately, that didn't really excuse the fact there was so little content within the game. It just felt like it was more a quick shovel together game mode where people were like, hey, we get to play Red Dead Online, hooray! And sure, the PvP, I personally feel, and I still do, is that in terms of gunplay and the way the guns sound and stuff like that, is more satisfying than GTA Online. But if there's one thing that still irritates me till this day, that's Bloom. Bloom is extremely annoying, and I really wish they would have just got rid of it with Red Dead Online, because it's a PvP environment, and if you want to get quick headshots and you want to have a quick, fast-paced game, having something like Bloom in there just completely eliminates that. Because if you have it in single player, sure, you can take your time, you can take your shots, but if you're in a fast-paced PvP environment, that doesn't really fly, especially if you have a perk like Painted Black, or well, back at the launch time, every single Deadeye card was just getting rid of the Bloom, and then later they patched that. But it really just comes down to everyone just using and abusing Painted Black, and that's kind of it. Personally, I don't really like playing that way, especially at the start of the game. We still didn't have the faster movement that they later implemented, which was a very welcome change, but it just felt like they, were trying too hard to make Red Dead Online, basically still feel like single player and not really treat it as a multiplayer game. But, like I said, later down the line they did fix that. But the first few months of Red Dead Online, pretty rough. Luckily though, after a couple of weeks, we got some more content added to the game, which we thought was like, cool. They're really trying to promote the game and get some stuff out there, and hopefully find some things that we can start doing and have some more fun and start going into what Red Dead Online could be. However, it turned out to be more of a quality of life update rather than adding new content. Sure, it was a very welcome change because there was a lot of things that were fixed, and there was also a lot of things, especially with the varmint rifle, if you guys remember that. That thing was reigning supreme, and it was quite frankly really overpowered, and after some nerfs and some adjustments, it reduced and it was more manageable. Personally, I was always been a fan of the Lancaster Repeater, and till this day it's basically still my go-to gun. But up until that point, before that nerf, varmint rifle, it was literally the only thing you saw people using. Combined it with the spamming of the dolphin diving, or however you want to call it, and you had a recipe for disaster, especially because back then the Deadeye cards were still giving, no bloom, which basically meant perfect accuracy at all times. Luckily though, on this patch they decided, you know what, that's actually not really good. We should not give that perfect accuracy anymore, except for the card that actually where it makes sense, which is painted black. Which meant that the mandate ever since then has been everyone used it painted black, and that's pretty much it. But during that December update, they also did some welcome changes to free mode events and making them more appealing to play. But that was kind of it. Like, obviously, later down the line, they added some more PvP modes. And during that update, they also added something which is still being used by myself and many others heavily, which are the daily challenges. The amount of gold you can earn with it is very nice. But there was a ever so slight issue with it. That was that the promised Evans Repeater that was going to come out turned out to be drip feed. And one of the first daily objectives was to use the Evans Repeater and get kills with it. Now, it's safe to say that pissed me off. I will spare you all the details of it because enough has been said about that when it did come out. But it was quite upsetting to see a DLC finally come out after all those months, only to see it being drip fed when people were literally like, hey, we really would like it if we can actually play new things. Because when the update came out, like literally 3 months after nothing of new content, they had the guts to be like, hey, here's daily challenges. See you next week. It was really irritating, and obviously the content came after that was, more showdown modes and also a new free roam event. But the problem with the free mode event was the fact that you had to wait until you could actually play it, and it took me literal weeks until I could finally play Fool's Gold. And when I finally was able to, it's a very enjoyable mode, and I still like to play it during these days as well. But the fact of the matter is that the first update that was finally coming out, it was pretty disappointing to see how they handled that. Luckily though, after a couple of months, it was time for a brand new update, which finally brought Red Dead Online out of its beta, which made us think, oh boy, here we go. Red Dead Online is out of beta. We're gonna go and get some frequent updates, and it's gonna get exciting, and we can get started on this is the big update. This is gonna be the one that changes everything, and hopefully this is gonna be the first step in the big direction that we're going to need. Now, admittingly, the May update, the spring update, was a very good update. And the main reason for that was because of the 5 missions that were added. If anything, Red Dead Online does something very well, and that is its story missions. Sure, after a couple of times you've kind of seen them, but that's really with anything, really. I mean, especially with GTA Online contact missions, after the amount of times we played it at this point, personally I don't get the same kind of enjoyments out of it, but the way they handled the story missions was quite nice, mainly because the first time you play them, you get a pretty nice first time bonus as well, which ranges between the $50 and the $100 mark, which is always very welcome because cash in Red Dead Online till this day, it's no longer hard to come by, but back in the day, it really was. And alongside of those 5 new missions, which I personally feel were definitely some of the best missions in Red Dead Online, especially the Destroyed by Grief and that wonderful mission called Banks Don't Rob Themselves, because that is the closest we got to doing an actual heist mission in Red Dead Online, and hopefully they'll pull through and make a heist update for Red Dead Online, because I feel it could really benefit from the game, although I don't know if it's going to be too little too late, but we'll discuss that at the end of the video. And admittingly, I never played all the free roam missions yet, and the main reason for that is because when Red Dead Online first came out, they were always broken, so I kind of just gave up on them. But the missions that they did add, and then later down the line, they added the Sadie Adler mission as well, which is very cool. The Black Bell mission was also something that was just cool to see those characters within the Red Dead Online environment. Unfortunately, like with GTA Online, they never pulled through with that, and they never added any more. So maybe we're going to be seeing more characters returning like that, but I guess that's the closest you guys are going to get to a Sadie Adler DLC. But I guess time will tell if they add more missions like that. Hopefully with some more depth as well, because those free roam missions are most of the time like, hey, go here, grab that, and bring it here. During that same update, they also started to really hammer down on the griefing issue that was going on in Red Dead Online, because what happens if people become bored? Exactly, they start to react on other people, which meant that Red Dead Online basically had a big issue with griefing, and these days it's not really a big issue anymore, because the way they've handled this, that basically no one is able to be seen on the map, and you have the defensive playstyle, which basically means that the only time you're going to be seeing someone on your map, they have red dots, and you already know, hey, if I pass them, they're probably going to kill me. Yeah, that still happens. I mean, personally, whenever I'm standing AFK, someone comes by and they still kill me. But the same thing happens in GTA Online, so it's kind of to be expected, I suppose. Luckily, though, I do feel that they really tried and really did well with getting rid of those griefing methods. A lot of those people out there who literally just started playing the game didn't even bother buying anything else with a common repeater. It was quite a trip to see them try really hard to get as many kills as possible because of that non-existent KD within the game. And it was understandable too, because a lot of people were, not really having fun with the game, and they still wanted to play the game, and this was apparently the only way they knew how to have fun within the game. Because, PvP modes didn't exist. I'll never understand why people get enjoyment out of free roam killing. I'm just like, it's unstructured, and you don't really get anything for it, so why not just go to PvP and get paid? And of course, let's not forget the big one, which definitely was the main draw to this DLC, which was the poker. Now allow me to show you a little bit of a compilation of a stream that I did when it did come out, made by my friend V. We want to see poker, yes, and I want to earn $1 million, but that ain't happening either yet, so, poker will come. I came for poker. Well, if you're patient, there will be poker. Joker, stop talking about poker. I think there's no poker, the title is clickbait. Oh, fuck off. Ironically enough, after I started playing poker, half of the amount of people that were watching the stream all left, so that was fun. Full video in the link in the description down below if you want to check it out. The spring update really was that update that was showed, hey, Red Dead Online does have potential. It just took half a year until we finally got something to show it. Really, this spring update should have been the first update to ever hit Red Dead Online, because if it did, it really wouldn't have turned off as many people as it did. If you had to wait 3 months for what was the very lackluster update that was coming out in February, you really could have changed the shape of how Red Dead Online was, but unfortunately that's the way it was. And I think a lot of people at that point of the February update were already really turned off by the game, and I feel for a lot of people that February update really was the final nail in the coffin. And I'm really curious to hear from you guys how quickly you guys gave up on Red Dead Online, and if you ever came back when it actually happened. Because finally, after about 4 months of basically getting not really anything in Red Dead Online apart from, hey, here's some new clothing, hey, here's a little bit of that. Now, 4 months might not seem like a lot, but if you're someone like myself who makes content about the game and streams the game every Tuesday as well, it became increasingly difficult to hide the fact that I was not having fun with the game, resulting into me playing the game for about 30 minutes and then turning it off to go play something else, because there really wasn't just anything to go for. PvP was repetitive, and there wasn't really anything, that was like, oh, this is exciting, and this is something I really would like to play, because the maps were always the same. There wasn't really anything going on, and sure, they did bonus money events and bonus XP events and this and that, but most of the time it's like, 30%, 40%, and the occasional 50%, but it was never like, double a cash or double RP. That never really was a thing, and I've always wondered why. It's like, if you want to encourage people to go play your game, give them like a fat bonus to actually go out there and go and do it, because that's typically what drives people to play GTA Online. And the ironic thing is that in Red Dead Online you had all these somewhat lackluster money events going on, and in GTA Online you had stuff like double bunker and like, the vehicle warehouse stuff was getting bonus money and this and that, and that was still exciting at this point of recording 6 years after the game came out. But Red Dead Online just kind of seemed like it was like a bit of an afterthought. That was until the update which completely changed the game and for the better that came out in September. That of course was the update that came out in September, the big one, the one that changed it all, the Frontier Pursuits update. With all the roles and all the wonderful things that it did bring, and I have to say that I really wish this would have been in the game from the start. If Red Dead Online started with these roles and these things, it would have shown the potential it had, and it would have been able to just simply build upon these things that were added from the start of the game. You didn't really have to deal with that year-long lacklusterness, I suppose, that was with Red Dead Online and its launch and just the way everything was handled. It just really is in a way frustrating to see that an update like this, as great as it is, and sure, I think it brought back a lot of people again, but I really feel that it was it was literally too late. If Red Dead Online had this update in its base game from the start, then they could have built it upon it. I really think that it could have been a fantastic multiplayer. However, after a year of lackluster updates and finally getting something substantial nearly a year after release, I feel that for a lot of people it was too late. And I have to say for myself, it's a little bit of the same too in that regard. Now, thankfully, after the release of this update, they also introduced legendary bounties, which are some of the coolest missions within the game as well. There's also a little story attached to them, which is something that's already very welcome. And obviously, the best way of making money in the game is now added too. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of it because it involves collectibles, but of course, Madame Nazar, everyone's bank accounts these days is extremely big, which does mean that I'm quite fearful for the next update whenever it comes out, because that means one thing and one thing only. It's probably going to be expensive, because I happen to know someone like my buddy Draconis who has $165,000. Someone like that is not really helping with the prices that are going to be happening within the next update. But, you know, even myself included, I've been more so a fan of the trader because it doesn't involve you riding around the entirety of the map, mindlessly picking up collectibles. Something I'm not really a big fan of, as some of you older people around the channel might know, because there has been plenty of rants about them, both on Twitter and in video form, because I don't really like collectibles, but that's mainly because I do them too much during my trophy hunting collections. Obviously, there has been enough said about the last update. It's safe to say it really brought that injection of content that the game really need. More focus on PvE, and not necessarily PvP now is kind of being neglected, which I personally find not really that great. You know, it really needs some love. You know, they added some new things to the game, like some new ability cards and stuff like that, which is fine. But I would really like to see them like putting a little bit of effort, maybe in the next update, or just a separate quality of life kind of patch real quick. Give it a little bit of a goal, like some more incentive to play PvP, because the only reason I think most people play it nowadays is for daily challenges. And the way I'm seeing, especially on PC, there is not really a lot going on right now in terms of player activity, even on console on PS4, which is quite rough. I mean, I know a lot of people out there are just mainly focused on PvE, which is fine, but even then, I personally feel like, hey, I nearly got $10,000. I don't really need any more, because there isn't really anything to really go for right now, because I got that rank 20 on all the roles now, and I'm basically kind of going and doing the same thing on PC, which is kind of fun, you know, going back to the bounty hunter and the trader and the collector. They really added replayability to the game, you know, gave things to go for and all that stuff, which I personally found very welcome. And of course, it would be really fun to see more roles being added to the game, which they have said. So, you know, since it's been a couple of months now since the DLC did come out, it could potentially be that we're going to see one maybe in like December or January or something like that. Or maybe even in February, you know. Maybe they'll release an update in February and call it the Redemption Update, and basically saying, hey, sorry about the last update we released in February. Here's something to make up for it. But I think right now their main focus is more than likely going to be on trying to fix Red Dead Redemption 2 PC and the issues that it is having. Personally, at the launch of the game, wasn't having too many issues, but the rocky release that was Red Dead Redemption 2 on PC probably didn't really help with the activity that is going on the PC platform and Red Dead Online. I've experienced a lot more crashes ever since the last update, so hopefully they're going to start fleshing those out. But it's not really a good start for those out there who are on PC and are trying to play Red Dead Online, because it probably is a big turnoff for a lot of people, which is obviously very justifiable for sure, because if you're going to have a game which is constantly crashing as you're trying to rank up, that's never a fun time. There's been too many times where I was trying to hand in a legendary bounty and the game would just simply crash on me whenever I ended Strawberry, which isn't fun. It cost me a lot of money and RP, especially for those bounty hunter targets. They can be pretty nice to get your bounty hunter level ranked up and all that stuff, but if you crash, you're not getting any of that, and you're gonna have to wait another hour until you can do the legendary bounty again, which slightly irritated me. But anyways, that was it for this one. Thank you so very much for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe for more, and I'll see you all later.